Hi, everyone, and welcome to Powered by Rhedium, a series of posts and videos in which we discuss projects that have been built thanks to Rhedium technologies. For this occasion, I am with Jonathan Greenberg, who is Digital Scholarly Publishing Specialist at New York University Libraries. Today, we're going to talk about NYU Libraries, NYU Press, and more specifically about their efforts to make scholarly publications available to everyone and to preserve knowledge. But I will let you tell us about that a little bit more. Maybe as a starting point, Jonathan, you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about what your position entails at NYU Libraries, and maybe a little bit more about the upcoming launch of the projects that we're here to talk about.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. My background is in scholarly publishing, specifically in creating innovative platforms and publications that are web-based. My position at NYU is such that I sit in two different departments. I am both in the Digital Library Technology Services department here in the library, as well as in NYU Press. So I understand things from both a librarian's perspective and from a publisher's perspective, which I find very useful, sort of as a bridge between the two organizations. The project that we're working on is based on a multi-volume history of Jews in the Soviet Union. These are books, but there will also be an open access web-based publication. We wanted to create a place where people can read, search, and interact with these books, a place that is accessible as possible, not only in the sense of digital accessibility that we normally think of, but also in terms of access. These books will be fully published in 2027, early 2027. Three of them have already been published, and you can read those open access already, and three are in the works. In 2027, we plan to publish this project in total using this new Rhedium-based reader.
All right, wonderful. I think you've touched upon the answer to my next question just a little bit because you mentioned accessibility, you mentioned access. Um, Now, at the start of this project, because obviously OpenSquare and open access publications are not new to NYU libraries, but what would you say were the needs that you identified at the genesis of this new launch that led to the choice of specifically Rhedium Web, Thorium Web-based technologies as a foundation?
Well, we have been using Rhedium technology since 2016. We have used the old Rhedium JS in our OpenSquare platform, which you alluded to. Our OpenSquare platform is our platform for NYU Press's open access books. That technology is aging, and we see, as I know that the Rhedium Foundation does, see the need for an updated web-based reader. But specifically, the things that we really identified that we wanted to build on were related to the ways in which users can interact with these books. So we mentioned accessibility, and accessibility is a very, very big topic, and I'll get more into that in a bit. But the plans and the existing affordances for digital accessibility that the Rhedium Web reader has is a major attraction for us. We also really want users to be able to interact in terms of annotation and citation. These are really important features for academic users. We know that some of these features are in the works, but we also really wanted to support the project so that the project can develop the kind of tools that we need in our environment, and I trust that they will be. I know that that Rhedium has plans for these. In general, NYU Libraries has a real commitment to open source software, so that was part of our decision. And we also have an interest in being able to adapt or contribute to software to accommodate the kinds of features that our users really need. And I think the kind of features that users across academic institutions really need.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on point in saying that NYU Libraries and your approach to this launch and the Redium Foundation are absolutely aligned in kind of that striving for like updated technologies, updated web reader and accessibility. That's absolutely correct. It's also interesting that you mentioned the importance of open source, especially in academic settings. I will definitely have another question about that later. Um, for now, because we're in the topic of that specific academic context and academia, um, maybe I'd be interested to know what is your vision in the way that this new web reader and this new approach to open access publications, this new space for students as well as researchers, what do you think is going to be the impact, and what is your ambition in that regards for students and researchers?
Well, I'm not going to predict what the longer term impact is, but I can give you my vision and my hopes. I really would really like a reader that is allows libraries and universities and other organizations to have control over the software that they use, and that gets into the open source question. And very importantly, especially right now, in the information that they are providing to their users. And so we I really hope that we as a library, we as a publisher, can have confidence that we understand this technology. This technology is not controlled by large corporations that need to um, need to take our data, and that is I can't really stress that enough. The This project, I mean, we've been talking a lot about things like accessibility and open source software and why we were so interested in using this this reader, and those are all general reasons that are kind of go beyond the project that we're working on. But I did want to speak a little bit about this specific project. This is a platform for the moment that is for one specific project at one publisher, and the part of the idea for us is that we would like these books, six, and there are six of them, to be used not only as books individually. You know, readers can read them front to back. They can consult them as reference if they'd like, but also as a whole set, as a whole volume. And so we've actually, along with Bluefire, built a cross-book search feature so that users can search through the entire six volume, or will be able to search through the entire six volume set all at once, using them really as one big resource. And that was something that we weren't going to invest the time in to build into the old outdated Redium reader, but we wanted to really use this project to contribute that kind of feature that will be really useful for this particular project and hopefully for other projects in the future.
And in a way, not just building, it's not just about publishing a specific book or a series of books or launching a new web reader to make life easier. It's specifically to build new tools to empower students, to spread knowledge, to preserve knowledge, which I know is a big thing with open access, open square, and I think your approach to this subject.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, uh, especially because this is open access. these resources are not only for students, for scholars, uh, or even for academic researchers more broadly. They're for anyone who has an interest in this topic. And I think that's something that um, we really do think about. You know, when we make these books open access, they become accessible to anyone anywhere in the world who has an internet connection and a browser, and who would like to dig a little bit deeper into the kinds of topics that NYU Press publishes in.
As you know, as you were saying earlier, and I think this is a very important notion, to distinguish that there are several kinds of accessibility. It's not only about digital accessibility the way that we understand, but also just access to content for everyone. To make knowledge accessible is to not always hide it behind, sorry, to not always hide it behind a paywall, to make it accessible to most, etc. Um, Now, accessibility, because it's a very important topic for the Redium Foundation. It's especially on our side of the Atlantic in France, here where I'm based in the EU. Super important keyword in 2025. We had a super important European law that was just passed a few days ago, um, expecting companies and especially tech software companies to conform to a certain set of rules. What role would you say accessibility, we've already touched a bit on that, but what role does it play in your vision for the platform? And kind of extending from that, what is the extent of its importance in academia, and how does Thorium, Redium, and our toolkit help you make a reality for NYU libraries?
Digital accessibility is incredibly important, both for NYU libraries and for NYU Press specifically. First, the European accessibility law has a real impact even on US publishers who hope to sell their books and distribute their books in the EU. And so NYU Press has been working to meet the demands of the EU accessibility law. More broadly, accessibility has become a a, a, a a goal and a value for the university more broadly. The libraries have made accessibility here, the libraries have made accessibility a real pillar of its striving to meet the needs of its users and of the moment. We really think about accessibility in everything that we do, and um, that goes for software. That goes for how we design our spaces, physical spaces in the library, and so it is absolutely essential anytime that we adopt a new software, anytime that we create a new product, that we are making sure that it is accessible as possible. Um, and I know that the press um, is is working very hard to make not only the platforms that it uses accessible, but also the books, of course, the books themselves, which which often need various remediation in order to be fully accessible. But whether or not we have the kind of mandates that the EU accessibility law presents, this is something that has become a real priority for us, both in the library space and in the publishing space, and we're hopeful that this project will really be a success and will be adopted widely because of those values. When I talk to others in the libraries and in the press about Redium, uh, this is really one of the aspects of it that will really I'll get a a reaction about. They'll be excited about, this is a sort of accessible first reader, and all of the technology behind it has accessibility in mind. That's something that people are excited about, and that the institution really has prioritized.
Now, our kind of mission specifically as a foundation is advocating for more accessible, smoother, easier, interoperable reading solution, whether it be on web or on mobile. Um, our kind of keywords, the very core of our approach, very core of our toolkits of our expertise is specifically open source technologies, vendor neutral, and as you mentioned earlier, to kind of detach from proprietary solutions to embrace standards. And you've made quite clear in your speech from the beginning of the interview that this is also something that is important to you, to kind of go towards open source, to go towards universal solutions in order to unify the experience from academic institutions to others and even beyond the walls of university. Um, in your own words, what role would you say that open source and standards should play in academic publishing, academic institutions and libraries in general? More specifically, because I know this is important to you, in regards to preserving and distributing publications.
Libraries, in many ways, are all about standardization, all about cataloging books in standard ways so that they can be found, and so that when they're found, users understand what they're getting. Um, and we've also seen that standards allow books and other resources and websites in general to be accessible. They allow conformance to particular standards or guidelines, so that developers and creators who may not have expertise in accessibility per se can still use those standards, those guidelines, to make them accessible. And the same goes for preservation. I have worked for a number of years on a project that is looking at how we can make complex forms of digital scholarship easier to preserve. And one of the recommendations that we've made over and over again is to use standards-based file formats, standards-based platforms, standards-based technologies in general, because when a preservation organization or a library takes control over a particular publication and needs to preserve it in a way, or needs to republish it years down the road, if it wasn't built according to standards, many aspects of it are going to be much, much harder to reactivate or republish or to make work in terms of web technology. So standards are very, very important, both in terms of accessibility and preservability. Although I will say that you know we do have to be careful of not demanding conformance for every type of book and publication. We see a lot of very interesting ways in which scholars and publishers have been innovating in the publishing world and in scholarly communication more generally. And sometimes that innovation requires breaking down barriers, breaking norms, even breaking with existing standards. And we don't want to discourage that kind of experimentation. So, this is why I keep mentioning not only standards, but recommendations, best practices. And so I think we need to think sort of as a broader publishing industry, to both develop standards and encourage publishers for whom it makes sense to use those standards as widely as possible, but also build tools and structures that can accommodate things that might break from those standards when necessary.
Actually, it's an interesting transition to my next question, which has more to do with the future specifically of this specific launch and projects, the future in general. After the launch of the final books, which I believe you said was aiming at 2027, early 2027, how do you want to see that platform and those efforts grow? And what will be your next priorities and wishes regarding their development?
Well, we would really like to use this reader technology not only in the Jews history of Jews in the Soviet Union project, which is what the current project that we're implementing it in, but also more broadly in NYU Press's Open Square platform. We don't currently have a timeline for that, but that would be the immediate next step on our end. More broadly, I would like the reader to be used in library settings, in other publishing settings, and I think I would really hope that other publishers and other platforms are interested in adopting this technology and perhaps contributing to it. I do realize that in order for Redium Web to be successfully used in libraries, there will need to be accommodation for digital rights management in Redium Web. But I know that those in working on Thorium Web, working on the Redium toolkit, are very much aware of that. But you know, as much as we might want to prioritize open access publishing and open access scholarship in the library here and at NYU Press, we do realize that in our current world, a fully functional reading system needs to be able to accommodate DRM as well. And we want our users and we want other libraries users to be able to have a full choice of the books that they are able to access, whether those books have DRM or not.
Now, before we end this interview, I have one more question for you, which is quite simple. It's not even really a question. Is there anything about the platform that we haven't mentioned or that you haven't been able to bring up that you think our listener, the people that will watch this video, will be interested to know about specifically this project?
Yes, I think I'd like to just say something about browser-based, web-based reading and publishing. We in NYU libraries have had an interest in this topic for the past decade, longer than the past decade. We led a project that ended in 2018 called Enhanced Networked Monographs. And that was an attempt to create a platform where books, they all happen to be open access. Books were all lived side by side on one big platform and were indexed in a way that made connections between those books for the purposes of search, for the purposes of seeing synergies where you might not have seen them, and for the purpose of helping users to discover the knowledge that they needed. We also were really interested in things like web-based annotation, ways in which you can use web-based books and share annotations with other users. A web-based book has a particular URL, unlike an EPUB file that you might sort of load onto your device. And so users, whether they're in a class, whether they're in a reading group, whether an instructor is using it in a specific way, or it's simply for your own use, you can annotate a book that's on the web and share that annotation and have discussions about that book via the internet. And all of those things are still things that I think we're very much interested in. The idea that books on the web can be networked is something that is really special to the web. And that is one of the reasons why I'm really so excited about Redium Web for in our world. That's something that I think not every corner of publishing thinks about networked monographs in the way, or networked books in the way that we might in libraries, or in our library in particular. But that's something that I think, for scholars and for instructors and for students, is something that will be very exciting if and when we can spread the technology and develop the technology in a way that users can really embrace it.
Absolutely. And I'm for myself pretty confident that we will. And I really look forward to that kind of very like start, that very first launch with the last three books of the series. I'm really excited to see it happen. Thank you so very much, Jonathan, for joining me today and sharing your insight with us. This has been an absolute pleasure, a great conversation. I really hope that our viewers will appreciate it as much as I did, and I surely hope that you had a great time as well.
Well, thank you very much, Solan. It was a pleasure to meet with you.
As for you watchers who are seeing this video, if you like this interview, don't forget to like it and subscribe to our social media channels on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you are on YouTube, don't forget to click on the bell icon to switch on notifications and be notified about our videos as they come. And until next time, have a great day, and I will see you in the next interview.